Musical Talk, the UK's independent musical theatre podcast. And we start today with a song from the show Love Stuck called Twice the Man.
Yesterday I felt my whole world change. Everything was different except for people's names. I was shy and I was scared, now I'm tall and brave. Still loving in my nature, but it's in my DNA. 'Cause I've flown from my nest of fear and perched myself up high. No gravity can't hold me, I belong to the sky. Where the moon and stars watch over alongside the sun. Where I'll watch as well, yeah, I'll watch as well. I've torn down walls, I'm limitless to roam. I have caught horizons and I'm pulling them all home. If I try, I'll succeed, change is on its way. I'm twice the man I was yesterday. Alive with song and people dancing to the beat of the rhythm of the road work and the buskers on the street. My friends are now my brother, standing by my side. I'm so grateful they love me and in them I can confide. I'm no longer scared of James, I'm not so naive. No more holding back, I can't help who I believe. That I should spend my days with and seal them with a kiss. A song of the moon makes me think of you. I've torn down walls, I'm limitless to roam. I have caught horizons and I'm pulling them all home. If I try, I'll succeed, change is on its way. I'm twice the man I was yesterday. Look at me, illustrate with words. That shy guy with a backpack, now all seems too absurd. If anything is possible, then change is on its way. Now I'm wide awake, I'm feeling great. I've torn down walls, I've broken free. I'll sing my name, I am Charlie. Amongst these friends I stand proud, change is on its way. I'm twice the man I was yesterday.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Musical Talk. I'm Thos Ribbits. Insert comedy line here. We really don't have time today. Moving on. Right, well, we do actually have quite a lot to be getting through today. We're going to be talking about 6 shows. We're also going to hear 5 songs. We're going to hear from 4 people. And 3 of the shows we're going to be talking about today can be seen in the next few weeks at venues across the country, not just London, I'm pleased to say. Which leaves us, if we're doing a countdown, with 2 and 1, which I reckon as 2 collie birds and a partridge in a pear tree, but really I just can't lever them in. And besides, I think it's the wrong time of year for that kind of thing. So, you've already heard a song called Twice the Man. That's from a show called Love Stuck. So today we're going to kick off with a conversation about that show, which could have been seen in London at the Cockpit Theatre in 2017, and which had a tremendously well-received score, which has recently been recorded for posterity. More from that later on. And we'll also be hearing about the people behind that, that's PJ Nielsen and Catherine Kitchener, telling us about their new show, Ordinary Days by Adam Guan. It's a fringe favourite, and it's going to be on in London between the 5th and the 16th of March at the Bread and Roses Theatre in Clapham. So for the next 20 minutes or so, let's hear more from PJ Nielsen and Catherine Kitchener. Musical Talk.
So I'm PJ Nielsen. I'm the head of Curious Tales Theatre Company and producer.
And I'm Catherine Kitchener, and I'm the artistic director of Curious Tales Theatre Company.
Now, Curious Tales is a theatrical company, as you've just established. It's got a show coming up, Ordinary Days by Adam Guan, but also it's had shows in the past, so you're not a new setup. And Interestingly, you deal, I think, with both established shows and shows that you've written yourself. So there's a creative element beyond the normal creativity in theatre, in the sense that you're writers as well, and performers. So your biggest show up to date, I'd say, is Love Stuck. Is that correct?
Yep.
Now, that was a couple of years ago. Tell us a little bit about that show. We've heard one of the songs already.
Yeah. Love Stuck is set in a university. It's centred around this idea of everybody having something that they're stuck in love with and they can't get away from. You have Charlie, who is someone who wants to find himself, Lily, who is stuck in love with art, and Jake, who is a sort of nerdy gamer. And then they sort of meet other people and how their lives interact and, the difficulties that come from typical university.
It's interesting because I've listened to the score and I've enjoyed it a great deal, but it's very interesting to me that listening to the show from that perspective, the word that is really most heavily important here is love. Because it's not, as you might think, actually the ups and downs of people in their university in their first year in any academic sense, although obviously that's a backdrop. So it's really about the interrelationships between people and the changing interrelationships between people. So how did it come to be written? Obviously, the subtext here is this from life?
Oh, okay. Not really. I mean, there's a few songs where I found it easy to tap into my own personal experiences to write it. For example, there's a song on the album called The Model Man and Life in Stills, which are probably very personal to me. And Player 2 is a very game-orientated song, which I am a little game nerd myself. And I when Adam approached me with the script, I really enjoyed the characters that had been created, and I felt like I could give them all a voice in a way musically, which I'd like to think I accomplished.
Oh, well, you certainly did. Let's just unpack a couple of things here, because you said a minute ago that you were the lyricist and the co-composer. Now, it's quite interesting to me, because quite often you get that the other way round. You get a composer and perhaps two lyricists working together. How does one co-compose?
So in our instance, a lot of the songs I wrote on a 4-track with just my acoustic guitar and my vocal on top of it. I'm not the greatest of vocalists, but it was just basically getting everything down to demo. And then I sent all the demos over to Jake Few, who rejigged them, created piano reductions, and from there I assigned the notes to different instruments and then sent it back to Jake. And
so it was a back and forth, an iterative process as you were developing it. So yes, because it's not just standing by a piano with a piece of paper anymore, is it?
No,
it is.
not,
Yes.
no.
Technology has changed the method by which composition takes place, but one hopes also allows it to be richer and more sophisticated in some cases.
And then the cast join, and then you have to fit it into all of their individual voices, change harmony lines, all sorts.
And you were in the cast?
I was in the cast,
Yes, well, let's talk about that then. So the character you played was?
Lily. And she was a photography student, and she was quite interested
A
as
life
a
in
character.
stills.
She was, yeah. As soon as she got there, she knew exactly what she wanted to do, which was create. And she was an interesting character because she wasn't searching for that, because she already knew what it was, but it got challenged as we went through the story, which was really interesting to play. She was also very different to myself, very out there, very rebellious, would just say whatever she thought, and that was great to play. Yeah.
Refreshing or difficult?
Difficult and refreshing. I think
I gave you options.
It was,
Take them both.
It was surprising for me because I thought I was going to find the kind of out there, confident side more difficult. But actually I found the breaking down moments, the vulnerable moments more difficult to play in contrast to the I can just say whatever I want because that's who I am.
And what would you put that down to? That's quite interesting. Just is that because you as a person, you, not rather than your character, would not want to reveal too much vulnerability in real life, and therefore it's difficult also to do it on stage, which is the most exposing thing? Or is it actually that you were living a character and you think that character would find that difficult?
I think it was probably more Lily's character.
So you were immersed, essentially?
Yeah, she's not the kind of character who would want to show at all that she was broken. So it was hard to get the when am I joking and when am I being serious, but yeah, it was really fun.
And you just mentioned, in fact, that obviously the moment the cast get involved, you have a new layer on the music, and the musical direction has to adapt to your performance. Of course it must. Can you give me an example of what happened to you on the score? How did that happen?
it was a whole group of different kinds of voices, which was exciting. I think me and the other female actress in it, we had very different places where our voices sat. And sometimes it would be that I was on the really high soprano harmony, and I'd be like, this isn't exactly me, whereas she was a soprano, so we'd swap it over. It was great in terms of we felt like we could bring what we wanted to the table, speak about it with the creatives, and it was very collaborative, which was fun because it made you feel like you were the characters. It was great.
And was that easy for you?
Yeah, I was always very open about having the cast come with... I wanted the cast members to embody the characters and bring them life. So with some of the songs, like there's a rap song called Thinking About Me and whatnot, where I really wanted Sam, who played as James, to bring ideas for like how it's a very fast song. It's rap.
It's a patter song, essentially, in the old terminology.
Yeah.
Gilbert would be pleased.
He sort of struggled with some elements of that, so we worked with it together to sort of make it so he finds it easier, but also how he can change the words to make them more synchronised with his character.
Oh, I see. Yes, so it's the symbiosis between character and what they're saying. Yes, exactly. I agree with it. So everyone was able to buff and polish their material, I suppose, to make the voice of the individual character. This is what Sondheim says, in fact, isn't it? But people say, "Oh, you can tell a Sondheim song," and he says, "Well, really, I'm writing for different characters."
Yeah.
So actually, you shouldn't be hearing Stephen Sondheim. You should be hearing character Fred or character Alice or whatever performance you're having.
There was even things with lyrical changes that you brought forward.
There were bits where you felt, I don't feel like my character would actually say this. It's not really in her terminology.
Now, are you talking here about the expression of what she's saying, or the way in which she's saying it, the use of English?
Yeah, probably the use of English. Just certain words that I feel like, no, she wouldn't really say that. And then it was just a case of saying, can I just tweak that word a little bit, just to make it feel more like Lily language, and that was great.
So, let's talk about one or two of the songs, actually. I think my favourite song is the song you've already alluded to about the gamer. There's a gamer character, which I know, as you said, has a personal connection for you and your interest personally. What I loved about it, and it comes very early on in the show, is that there's a kind of odd dynamic, and when I say odd, I mean marvellous, whereby, obviously, for a middle-aged gentleman of my vintage, the idea of playing computer games with someone as a way of flirting or forming a relationship or developing getting to know you skills is not something that was available to me. And so it feels very modern. And obviously it's using technology in order to explore a relationship. Whether it's successful or not is another matter. But of course, within the sort of Dungeons and Dragons-y kind of expansive world creation, the fantasy world in which they're operating, the very old-fashioned kind of ideas of chivalry sort of still exist. So you've got this super modern way of having a relationship, which in many ways then develops by reflecting a very old-fashioned way. And I really like that as a conceit for a song, which is why I think that song is so successful. You get a real... It's interesting in what it's saying, and the character of the person singing it really comes across, as well as it does develop a plot.
Oh, thank you.
That's my interpretation.
Thank you, yeah.
No, you're completely wrong.
Jake, the character who is played by Luke DeBelder, who sings that song, Luke really did embody the character of Jake completely. He really transformed it. We always thought Jake was this very socially... He's not very good in social situations.
Slightly awkward.
Yes, and his knowledge of how to treat people, as you're saying, chivalry is probably going to be very from books or classic movies and stuff like that. But mostly, yeah, he loves video games. We always thought he'd be that sort of gentleman.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of challenged when he meets Lily,
yes,
who is the complete opposite to him, but he's kind of intrigued by it at the same time.
She's not a damsel, is
No,
she?
she's not a damsel, and I think
she's certainly not in distress.
She would have to be the one who's probably more looking out for Jake as he's making bad decisions, and that probably challenges his whole idea of what romance and relationships are.
I think with that song, particularly the second verse with the encounter with a troll, I really tried to create a sort of situation that happens in video games, especially games like World of Warcraft and stuff like that. I tried to get into the head of Jake of being what would Jake think is the most courteous and most wonderful thing he can do, and that's using his last health potion on his fiancée.
Well, as I say, because with just the very fact we've been able to have this conversation about it, I think that song is so successful and so clever and so full of character, but also that push me pull you internal dynamic really takes it somewhere, and I think that's fantastic. And it's interesting just from that conversation that we were talking about, that the Lily character experiences life by being in life, and the Jake character experiences life at one remove, as you say, from books, films, or from his experiences of playing the game. And it's actually, so if you translate them both into a real life experience, it's actually someone who is very unworldly or lives in other worlds, and someone who is genuinely worldly and lives in this one, and how that will or won't work successfully. There we are, there's the dynamic of that. I found that fabulously fascinating.
Thank you very much.
What's your favourite song?
My favourite song is, it's a toss-up between The Model Man and Life in Stills. They'd always been my favourite since I wrote them. I think The Model Man is a very simple song, but lyrically I was able to really sort of, as I said, it's a very personal song, and that time when I wrote it, I had just moved out for the first time, and that and Life in Stills, they both have lyrics of which are, I don't know, I'm a very lyrical person, so I like the idea of the lyrics that sort of guide the song.
Well, it's interesting because, once again, you've said something I thought quite interesting there, that you were talking about simplicity.
Yeah.
You know, and you're almost apologetic for it being simplistic, but actually that's quite the wrong attitude. Sometimes simplicity is how you get to truth. Not always. Sometimes you need sophistication to understand the nuances, but actually, I suspect in emotional terms, not always of course, but simplicity can sometimes get to a point which is otherwise missed by too much flimflammery. And you are, even as you're speaking, you're talking about these songs which mean more to you, and actually you're slightly more tongue-tied than you've been on some of the other things. But that's also quite interesting, that your own personal emotion in relation to these songs is still there, even though these were written several years ago now.
Yes, yeah. I think, it's in terms of, as you're saying, simplicity and the actual structure of the songs. The Model Man is verse, chorus, bridge, and Life in Stills is verse, chorus, bridge, and then a slow chorus. And I think a lot of the other songs I really tried to create structures which are out of the norm. Thinking About Me as a song that's split in half. You have the beginning slow part and then the rapping part or patter part. And I tried to do that with a lot of the other songs, like Requiem of the Night. It's a very weird song.
Structurally or
even structurally, it's there's not really a chorus. It's verse, and then all the verses together, all overlapping. And I thought,
how very lame is.
So I think it might be just the simplicity which draws me to The Model Man and Life in Stills.
That does beg a question, of course, which is, forgive me, when you're constructing a song, do you do it by working out what the structure is going to be, or do you write, or are you working on the meaning first and then seeing how the structure comes along, or is it organic and you do it and then you say, oh look, the structure happens to be X, Y, or Z?
I tend to, when I write the songs, I tend to go lyrics first, unless it's a very particular instrumentation or sound. And it's very organic in the sense that it comes together. I know that for Requiem, for example, I wanted to choose a really weird structure because it was meant to signify a dream. So I thought a dream is meant to be here, there, and everywhere.
Otherworldly, isn't it?
Really? It's not meant to be so rigid. And in other songs like Thinking About Me, I wrote while I was riding my bike to work, just singing it over to myself, and just while I'm riding.
A literal
my bike.
Song cycle. That's absolutely fascinating. So, to bring this element of the conversation to some kind of closure, it's fair to say, isn't it, that the reviews of Love Stuck all made a point of saying how good that the score was. And there's a rather marvellous thing about this, which is that other people, even though they can't now see the show, can enjoy the score because you've recorded it.
We have.
So tell us a bit about that.
So we recorded it very DIY style as well. It's not done in studio. It's done in a bedroom, which is always good.
Can I tell you, we're in the 21st century. even the Beatles will be recording in a bedroom if they were operating now.
Yeah, we got all of the cast back together, which was nice for me.
It is an original
yeah,
cast recording.
Everyone was eager to come back, redo it. During the whole show, everyone was saying, "Are we going to do a recording?" So that was really nice.
They do it like that?
Yeah. We're gonna do it. But it was nice because obviously we formed little bonds. There was the three of us who were like meant to be best friends, which was nice. Recorded it all.
Yeah. So the soundtrack's available to stream on Spotify, Amazon Music, available on iTunes, and also on our website, curioustalestheatre.co.uk.
Perfect. And it's Love Stuck, one word, isn't it?
Love Stuck.
That's the way to find it.
Yes.
But, as we said at the beginning of this conversation, this isn't the only show that you've done. That's just the beginning of your company in some senses. Now you're bringing to London a well-known piece, I think, from the Fringe. I've seen it several times up in Edinburgh in the last few years and went to see it myself a couple of years ago. Ordinary Days by Adam Guan. So let's talk about this. First of all, why have you selected this?
It's a show that's really close to my heart because I performed it in my final year of university. Originally, we did it with about 12 people in the cast. So,
really?
yeah, we split the characters into kind of like different versions of themselves, which actually worked quite interestingly. It was really good, but it's quite nice to have the whole characters to ourselves now. But
because it is a four-person piece.
It is a four-person piece, and I reconnected with the girl who's playing Deb, and she said, I wanted to put it back on for a long time. That's Katie Forge. And I was like, okay, let's do it. I said, I've got a production company, let's go for it. And it's very special in the sense that we've got the original person who played Warren back in it, and then another person from our university to play Jason. So it feels very family.
Part original cast.
Yeah, and we're all from the London College of Music. The cast, so it's very special. And then we've got a director from the London College of Music. I think the themes of like connectivity and everything, it's very special and it's very relevant, especially for like 20-somethings.
Well, let's talk about the piece, because you're producing it, aren't you, PJ? And you, Catherine, you're in it.
Yes.
But you're also the artistic director, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, because I think that's going to be the success of why this is such an interesting new interpretation of it, and why people should see it. But so, as producer, what are you bringing to it? Is it just the nuts and bolts element to it, or do you feel you've got a finger in the creative pie, or a thumb?
Yeah, I mean, I do like to. I felt with Ordinary Days after other shows, I really wanted to take a step back and just literally do a producing role. So yeah, that was the nuts and bolts, the admin stuff and everything behind it.
And it has to be done.
And it really does, especially when you're attaining rights as well from other companies. Yeah, for this I wanted to take a step back and do a strictly producing role. So in terms of artistic side and creative input, I think, mainly left to Catherine and a collaborative effort from the rest of the cast as well.
Now let's talk about Ordinary Days as a piece, because I think by doing so that will then allow us to talk about your ideas as the artistic director. It is essentially, as we said, a four-person piece in usual versions. And to me, it's an almost it's become an archetype of a particular form of fringe musical in particular, because it's a one-act piece. And that's one of the reasons you see it at fringes so often, I think. And it is almost the exemplar, it seems to me, and you can disagree if you think so, of the Tisch School, which is the American School of Arts, which specialises in a very particular kind of American musical, a very successful kind of American musical. There is a slight danger sometimes with Tisch that you can get a formula, or it feels perhaps a formula has developed through let's find success, let's mine that success. Okay? So, by which I mean, this is, as I say, the archetype. 2008, I think it was premiered originally, I think in London rather than America, but because it's an American piece by an American writer, Adam Guan. But it is about four characters who are essentially disparate and insular, but have connections thrust upon them by chance, and relationships develop as a result of that. And then the plot is what it is. But it is... Whilst it is about connectivity, and you said that yourself, the tone of the piece, oddly, for a piece which is about trying to find connection and is actually physically about making connection, is insularity, or so it seems to me, that there's almost... It comes across as four monologues with overlapping paths. I think if you were to draw the journeys of each of the four characters, they would spend most of their time apart with only the occasional overlap. And so a show about connectivity that comes through the sense of insularity, loneliness, solitude, is actually quite an interesting dynamic in its own right. And this, I'm not going to say it's the first, but it's the first really big successful one, which is why it has been on so often. There have been many copies since, not just in America, but in Britain as well. Very often railway stations and railway trains are used as a way of having people who might have a connection through external forces, shall we say, but having their monologues. I've seen it on trains, I've seen it on railway platforms. I've seen it in there was one I think a few years ago called 8 Stories, which was a clever play on words because it was set on 8 flats in different blocks, stories of a block of flats, and the interconnectivity or otherwise of the characters who lived in those houses, or flats I should say. So that's in no way to demean the piece, because I don't think it should be demeaned, but it has had the misfortune to set a trend. But it is the daddy, if you like, of these kind of shows. But, as I say, for me, the overriding feel has always been loneliness and insularity, which is why I was so intrigued by your artistic directorial overlay. Would you care to tell us a little bit about what you're doing? Do you have that same sense from the piece? And is that how you've come to this approach? So,
well, yeah.
The floor is yours.
A lot of the lyrics and, I don't know, the moments where there are higher stakes within the musical all seem to me to be quite connected to art. So we have the bits where they're at the Met Museum and the characters can't quite agree on what they like. So particularly for the main couple, so we've got Jason and Claire, they're together but they're very different. So Claire loves the contemporary art, Jason loves, as it is. This is what you see what you're meant to see. And then you've got Warren, who also identifies as an artist with his giving out the flyers. He's got his quotes on them,
and he's a mentor as well.
He is, yeah. So we wanted to bring this idea of art to the forefront. So we're focusing on live art throughout the show. So Claire and Jason are creating their 2 different pieces on each side. We've also got Warren and Deb drawing on the floor and everything. So it's kind of that idea of the art is what connects them. All of the stuff with the flyers falling also looks like a piece of art, so it seemed, why hasn't this been done before, kind of thing.
And it's a very good question. Why hasn't it been done before?
Yeah.
I know you won't have the answers to that.
Wow.
So, when did that idea strike you? Was that through the reading? Is that something you'd felt when you first performed it some years ago, or is that something you've thought about since and you think, actually, there are these other thematic things going through it based around art? Why hasn't it ever really been highlighted? Or is that something you actually bought when you decided that this was going to be the show you were going to do as a company and thought, now this is, I've just thought of it now?
Yeah.
When?
Well, when I think about it, when I originally did the show at university, my version of Claire always had like an art book with her.
Yeah.
So when I was at the Met Museum, I was drawing from the painting. So I think that was always close to me.
A character sketch?
Yeah.
See what I did there?
Yeah.
I'll stop now.
So that was something that was always close to me in my portrayal of Claire. I like that. I liked that she mentioned art a lot. I like that was deep inside her. When we actually came to putting the cast together, it worked out that I do freelance art, and Jason, who's played by Max Panks, he also does freelance art. He's very different to what I am. I do more like realism and portraits, and he does more watercolours and
impressionist stuff.
Yeah, landscapes. So it worked out that we were both artists. So we thought, do you know what? The show is about art. We both are artists. Let's see if we can do something out the box, cool, interesting with it.
So it was the creation of knowing who your cast was that allowed these opportunities to be developed. It's very interesting to me that you say that you and the Jason
Max,
character, he has a different style of art. So actually you've also got that real life reflects art and art reflects life kind of thing going on anyway. So you were talking about the 2 other characters, because the Debs and Warren characters are by no means in a relationship in the sense of a romantic relationship. In fact, I think Warren's gay, isn't he?
Yes.
But they are slightly more... Well, Warren's strange, but sort of lovable, or so it seems to me. You may not agree, but... and Debs is quite spiky.
Yes.
I want to use the word urban, but obviously urban is used and overused. And
it's
means,
sarcastic.
Yes, she's just a bit toothier, perhaps, a bit more edge. So you've got his sweetness of Warren, you've got her slight sparkiness, and you get that connection there. I like that, but also the fact that you're getting them to draw on the floor, because you've got the more traditional relationship between the 2 other characters, as such as it develops. And it isn't traditional, but it heads towards that way, shall we say? That might be a better way of putting it. That is the ambition. or at least for one of the characters. For the other two, the idea that they're drawing on the floor, and presumably all the art in the forms that you're talking about here merge into some cohesive whole.
Yeah.
But in different styles, feels in different places.
Yeah, more writing based. That was conceptualised by our director, Phoebe Rhodes. So when we brought her on, we already had the concept of the live art.
Yeah.
So she's been working on how to tie it all together.
And create some kind of integrity.
Yeah. And, it doesn't really make sense for just Claire and Jason to be doing it when it's a company of 4.
Yeah.
There has to be a reason. So that was her idea about the floor, and mainly being things like emails written on the floor, because Deb never identifies as an artist, and that's where her character is a bit more solitary in that sense and that's what makes it more kind of special when it comes to the end scene, which I don't want to give too much away if no one's watched it before, but and theirs is more based on words, I'd say, because Warren does his quotes and she's more into literature. So it's their kind of writing notes to themselves and then it all connecting together, and then so the other characters can see it and stuff like that.
But it creates a collage,
Yeah.
which is perfect 20th century art form, in fact, of course, where you create more from your parts, which also, I think, reflects back on then Ordinary Days as a piece, or so it seems to me, that actually that is what it's trying to create, the connectivity. Does creativity connect any kind of sense of merging? And I use the word merge as in fusion. Or is it because you can connect disconnectedly, if that makes any kind of sense? You can touch, but you haven't connected.
Yeah.
You can merge and you have fused. And I suppose it's the investigations on how far friendships and stroke relationships can or can't do that. Friends are unfused relationships.
Yeah.
Lovers are fused relationships. Or am I talking nonsense?
No.
I'm just riffing on this.
Well,
to be
it's
honest.
that idea of when the flyers do come down, that completely transforms Claire and Jason's relationship. And yet Warren and Deb have no idea that it's done that.
Yeah.
So they have connected, but they will never know why. They will never know what an impact they've had on each other's lives.
It's invisible
and
hands, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's the same with art, I'd say. Like, these amazing composers who we listen to all our lives don't know that they've changed someone's life somewhere. But that's what art is.
And to bring it down to the most banal level possible, Tate and Lyle, who we'll know as the people who made sugar, sugar and syrup, never met.
Wow.
Even though we associate them completely as a relationship and a double and a company that's branded
See
on
them
two people.
faces next to each other on the sugar pack.
That's as close as I ever got. Yeah. It's obviously a banal sideline, but it is interesting, isn't it, that actually you can
don't
have
know.
an amazing relationship in some sense without having any form of relationship.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, with that sweet taste left in our mouth, do you see what I did again? Ordinary Days, as I say, it's in its own right is an archetype and should be seen in that sense as it is a massively successful musical. This sounds to me like a really interesting artistic interpretation, and I look forward to the production itself. But it can't just be me. How can other people see Ordinary Days?
So Ordinary Days plays at Clapham, the Bread and Roses Theatre from March the 5th to the March the 16th. Tickets can be available on the Bread and Roses Theatre website. They start at £12 and £10 for concessionary rates.
So it's Clapham.
Clapham.
But which is the closest railway station? Because it's not Clapham Junction, is
Not
it?
Clapham Junction. Get the Northern Line to either Clapham Common or Clapham North. It's midway between there.
Make it Clapham North, because there's nothing common about this Ordinary Days, is there? But also, let's just remind ourselves one more time about your company's name and how people can find out more about you, not just this production, but future productions. So how do people contact you?
So you can find us on Facebook, Curious Tales Theatre, and Instagram as well, which is all linked on their Facebook page. If you also go to www.curioustalestheatre.com, you can see all of our social links there and keep up to date with our blogs.
Well, PJ, Catherine, it's been lovely talking to you, and it's been so interesting just in this half hour to talk about original pieces and how they develop and how established pieces can develop. So I wish you great success.
Thank you.
As a company and as individuals, and I look forward to speaking to you both again, I hope, about your future musical choices.
Yes,
Yeah.
we'll be in
Thank
touch.
you.
She was meant to be the one, Charlie. My own female. The one that I could show the true meaning of the name Longstaff. Go ahead, laugh. Everyone else does.
Sorry.
She was special, Charlie. You don't get it. Have you ever loved?
Well...
Then you don't get it. It was late and I'd finished a dangerous quest, so I used my reward for a pint of refreshment. My finger kept clicking as I downed that brew, and there stood a lady, AC 22. I typed nice breastplates, they mithril or daedric. She winked and invited me onto her friends list. We stayed up all night, we sent less than threes. My goblin heart flutters, this orcs into me. She gives me courage, she's got wisdom, and all the power she needs. She's my one-up, my 8th castle, my 50 golden rings. As we wandered the kingdom for dragons to slay, with dungeons to plunder and peddlers to trade, from the darkness a troll of mighty great stature. Defense is too high, we need to get stronger. Should we take on this monster? No, we won't survive. Only have one more potion for my future bride, but it struck us so hard we had to retract. I healed her and carried her all the way back to town. She gives me courage, she's got wisdom, and all the power she needs. She's my one-up, my 8th castle, my 50 golden rings. I had courage, she bore wisdom, and power over me. I have no lives, different castle, emerald shatter me.
And there we are, another song from Love Stuck and the newly recorded album of that score. It's called Player 2, and it's a song we were discussing in that interview. The one about the gamer living in his chivalrous fantasy world. Remember, if you want to go and see Ordinary Days, you can see it between the 5th of March and the 16th of March at the Bread and Roses Theatre in Clapham. Well, let's now turn to our next interview. It's with someone we've met before here on Musical Talk, Freya Smith, who you may remember from, I think, 2012, I spoke to about her show Party, which was a song cycle about a house party. Well, I'm delighted to say that she is still writing new shows, and she has a new one called The Limit, which is going to be part of the Vault Festival in Waterloo in London. And that's a show that you'll be able to see between the 6th of March and the 10th of March. So I caught up with Sophie to talk about her new show, The Limit, but also to catch up with what's happened to her since she came up with Part A, in that oh-so-long-ago Olympic year of 2012, when Britain was a happier place. Here's Freya Smith. Musical Talk.
My name is Freya Smith. I am one of the co-writers and also one of the co-directors of new musical The Limit, and I previously wrote a musical called Party, and also a musical called The Suicide Shop.
Two very different feelings just from the titles there.
Yeah.
Now, listeners with long memories and sharp ears perhaps will remember Part A, because you and I have discussed that. We think, don't we, 2012?
I
we think a very long time
did.
ago. Well, and it was a show that you'd been responsible for up in Edinburgh.
That's right.
So
yes.
let's briefly just remind people, just for a couple of minutes, what was Part A? Because obviously it's spelt Part A, but as you quite rightly pronounced, it's Party, or it has that opportunity for a double meaning.
Absolutely.
Tell us a little about it.
Part A is a song cycle, and it's all about the sort of different comical episodes that could take place at a house party. So all the songs are sort of united by the setting, and it's an observational comedy more than anything else. So there's a song about a young man who turns up at the party and realises he doesn't know anyone and what he does in that situation. There's a kind of vocal trio, male trio, about beer goggles.
Oh yes.
So
you
yeah,
could drive a person hazy.
exactly. It was kind of based on that feel, actually. But yeah, so it's very light-hearted, kind of pop rock feel to it. About 10 songs within an hour framework.
And because I had the privilege of talking about it with you, how did it go down?
It went down really, really well in Edinburgh. We wrote it with Edinburgh in mind, and I think it had like the sort of biggest reaction from sort of younger people, maybe people who don't necessarily think musicals are necessarily for them, because it was about, lots of the songs were about things that you wouldn't necessarily put in a musical theatre setting.
Well, people have an idea about what musicals, I'm putting this in big speech marks so people can't see us, what musical theatre is. And of course, musical theatre is in fact theatre, but with songs and other ways of expressing. So, you know, if you can do it in drama, you can do it in musical theatre.
Absolutely.
But for some reason, people seem to think it's all 42nd Street. So,
I know.
which is lovely, but...
I mean, I love that. I love tap shoes. But yeah, I think it is a real shame that sort of musical theatre just sits in that box.
Yeah,
and
it's seen as
often
niche.
it's really hard to break through that sometimes. Yeah.
And it's not niche at all.
It's really not. It can be universal.
I mean, you've just reminded me about the idea of it being a song cycle with all this observational stuff about those different feelings which we've all experienced at different parties in our life. You know, we've all felt like the odd one out or part of a group or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I can see absolutely why that would work brilliantly as a musical. In a minute, we're going to talk about your new show, but I think we should at least touch on the other one with the provocative title. So, what I'm delighted by is that obviously Part A was successful enough and you felt happy enough with it as one of its creators to then go on and do something else.
Yeah.
So what follows?
So, The Suicide Shop, it's a black comedy, as you may be able to tell from the title.
Well, I was rather hoping so, yes.
Very, very, very black comedy. It's based on an existing novel by a French writer called Jean Toulet. It's all set in a dystopian future, and it's about a family who run a shop that helps people to find the best mode with which to kill themselves. So they have a range of very sort of like shiny, sleek products. But the show is actually about a lot more than that. So
of course.
You knew it was going to be. At the heart of it is a little boy called Alan, the youngest son, who has a completely different mindset to the rest of his family, and he spends the whole musical trying to change their perspectives, and very slowly and very effectively does just that.
So when was this?
So we started writing this about 2013, 2014.
So it was your post-party
Yes, it
piece.
was. And we developed it in a number of ways. We did a workshop with arts ed students. We did one
in Chiswick.
Yeah, in Chiswick. And we did one at the MTA. We did a rehearsed reading at the Other Palace. And we're on about the 4th draft of it now.
So this is still a work in progress.
It's still
isn't it?
cooking. It's still a work in progress.
So I'm rather keen to hear more about that when the time comes. So
Yeah,
please
we're
do keep me in the
definitely
picture.
going to go back to it. Yeah.
It sounds delightfully, as you say, dark but toothsome. And there's always something, I don't know, that I find something immensely amusing about things which are macabre.
I know, absolutely. It's been so interesting to write that show as well, because it often feels a little risky. You never quite know how it's going to go down. At the rehearsed readings, people absolutely loved it, and then you'd have one in the audience who found it incredibly offensive.
Yes,
And
or not to their taste.
Exactly. You know you're not going to please everyone, but it is a careful line to tread sometimes. Yeah.
Although with a title like that, there must have been some sense from at least a fairly intelligent audience member of what they were likely to get.
Yeah, you'd hope so.
So that's a show in developmental progress.
That's
However,
right.
we're here today to talk about The Limit.
Yes.
Which is your 2019 offering, essentially, isn't it?
It is. It's brand new.
Yes, so tell us more about that. I mean, what is it?
The
What is
Limit.
the very limit?
Well, ask a woman in during the French Revolution that question. It's all about a forgotten female mathematician from history called Sophie Germain. I found out about her when I was doing a bit of research on women in history. I knew I wanted to do something that was about sort of an extraordinary woman in history, and I knew there would be quite a few. So when I started looking,
so many of them.
Absolutely, that's the thing. I couldn't believe it, the amount of amazing women whose stories have not been heard by, a significant audience. I went looking and I found out about Sophie Germain. Her story is remarkable. So she was born in 1776, so she lived through one of the most turbulent times she's French, so she lived through one of the most turbulent times in French history, through the Revolution, through Napoleon.
And the fact she got out on the other side.
She did, she made it, just about. And she, from a very young age, was incredibly curious. She was from a middle-class family, so she wasn't particularly poor, but she was still at a point where she wasn't, as a girl, was not permitted an education.
Yes.
So she was stuck at home.
That egalite wasn't quite as egal as one might have liked. Yes, quite.
You will need to hear our first song to
right.
hear more
Oops.
about that. It's called The Benefit of Mankind. So,
Right, okay.
So she, from a very young age, was really interested in academia, learning, and sort of took refuge in her father's library, which her parents were not happy about. They tried to remove her several times. She always went back in. They took away her blankets, her clothes. One night she fell asleep in there. They came back in the morning. Her ink pot had frozen. It was that cold. But yeah, so, just as a child, this incredible determination and single-mindedness was already there. She taught herself maths, Latin, Greek. And then when she got around the age of 18, she was like, I really reaching the limits here with what I can teach myself from my home. We don't know historically how this happened, but she found out about a student at the local university called LeBlanc, who, for whatever reason, was not attending. This is obviously a male student.
Yes.
So she very cannily decided to take on his identity in order to submit work. The lecture notes from the école were public, so she had access to them, but she couldn't submit anything under her own name. So she took on his identity and submitted work through that way.
How wonderful.
Yeah, so that's like the sort of first part of the story. In reality, historically, we don't know how far she took that. But obviously, this is a show. She is dressed up as LeBlanc. She goes into that lecture hall, and I will.
Popes and pirates are allegedly done much the same, so I don't see why we shouldn't have a mathematician do it too.
Yeah, and so she's kind of found out. She has to go back home, but she continues working. Always makes.
We should never forget she has a massive flair for mathematics.
My gosh,
she actually is.
She's a prodigy.
She is an
a
amazing
genius.
woman.
She really was a genius. And yes, so she just continues. She enters competitions, and eventually she becomes the first woman to ever win this huge award in France. That's called the French Academy of Sciences Prize, and she won it for her work in elasticity,
which is a mathematical concept.
Yes, and after that, she still wasn't allowed to go to lectures, even though she'd won this prize, even though the whole of Paris knew she was this incredible woman. And they also didn't publish her work either, so she had to publish it herself. And she's also plagiarized by a male contemporary. So that's sort of the angle that we come in on with the show. We look at the relationship between her and the guy that goes on to plagiarize her work.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
It's not LeBlanc, is it?
It's not LeBlanc. And when I say relationship, I do not mean romantic relationship. There is none of that.
Connection, I think, is more than...
Exactly. Friendship.
Do you go so far as to include, however, she did have some champions in society who also were irritated that society's rules were holding her back?
Yeah. She did have a few mentor figures. For the purpose of our show, we've kind of condensed that into one figure. There's a professor called Lagrange.
Yes.
He helped her out. He had sort of correspondence through letters with her. That's kind of how she made these connections.
He's the man in the culture.
Yeah.
But he's liberal enough to want to
exactly.
to detect genius when he sees it.
Exactly. I mean, these are people who are really excited by mathematical advances, so it would be silly of them to overlook this amazing woman. She also wrote to some sort of mathematical celebrities of the day, like Gauss, who's still really well known. And he wrote back to her, and originally she wrote to him as LeBlanc, but he did find out who she was, and he was amazed and, really praised the work she did. Yeah, it sort of dropped off. It petered out, but for a little bit.
Yeah, he didn't cut her.
He didn't cut her loose, yeah.
And then, of course, am I not right in thinking that actually that some of her work is of such significance that it was significant in resolving Fermat's last theorem. So it's stuff that's lasted over 200 years to this day, is it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, she made significant advancements to Fermat's last
Proper
theorem.
legacy.
Yeah, and there's something called a Sophie-Germain prime as
Oh, is
well.
there?
So that kind of arose out of the Fermat's last theorem stuff that she did. So yeah, her work has been really important.
So this is a woman who, by the way, people should, even if they don't come and see your show, which they should, but they should look up because
Yeah.
she is a remarkable character.
Yeah.
And as you say, within the context of that massively, genuinely revolutionary changed France, and as in the sense of the real revolution, and then the reign of terror. She would have been very young then, but then Napoleonic rule, and then the return of the monarchy.
Yeah.
You know, that's a lot of things to have gone through just in one's own life,
Yeah.
let alone all the things she was struggling with. So there's a lot going on in this very... I can see why this is such an attractive story, an attractive
Yeah.
character, in not an attractive time, but certainly an interesting time. So obviously you thought, this is the person. Then what? How, spotting your character from history, who's
Yeah.
just desperate to sing a song, how do you then turn that into a musical?
Yeah, so the next step was to kind of do as much research as we could, so reading biographies. There isn't really that much on her. We don't know that much. So even in these biographies, there was a lot of, we're not sure that this happened. This may have happened. As a writer, that is wonderful.
Yes.
That's exactly what I want. Because I can say, oh, well, I'm going to write this into it then.
A bit of license.
Exactly. There's a lot of freedom with the material. And I think something important to us was establishing the right kind of musical feel as well.
Yes. So what did you go for?
It's pop rock score. So,
So why did you come up with that? Because that's interesting.
Yeah, that's...
Because obviously you don't want 18th century minuets. It would be
yeah, exactly.
dull after a
It
while.
needed
Yes.
something. I think there's two main reasons. One is the sense that in a way that's not a million miles from something like Spring Awakening, that kind of music really serves as an outlet, like an emotional outlet. You feel the frustration.
It's just the anti-constraining form of music.
Yeah. And we do reach in multiple times during the piece these moments where suddenly, you need this sort of loudness. You need something
explosion.
big. You need an explosion. I guess that's like the closest musical way of doing that, with a sort of rock, electric guitar feel. And the second thing was really about accessibility. We really want her story to resonate with today's audiences. We want a catchy score that
She's
people
not
want to
pickled
sing.
in time, is she? Her struggle, although different to what it might be today, is still
Yeah,
feelable, resonance.
absolutely.
Yeah,
There's still a real minority of
point.
girls and women pursuing
Yeah.
those subjects, and I think we do need to unpick why that is. And I think if we can look at that through an artistic lens, that could be really helpful.
I suppose, let me just ask you, off the top of one's head, you also think mathematics. And I don't know about you, but I think, although mathematics touches everything and is the cornerstone of all creation, for goodness sake, at the same time, it's a page of numbers.
Yeah.
And so are there any songs that sort of play on that kind of the kind of music? If someone said to me I was writing a musical about maths, obviously you expect one kind of song that's kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of, when I use the word pizzicato, I mean I don't.
You mean
know
like,
what I mean?
it's like, I know what you're saying. You're saying like finishing the hat, right?
Yes,
Like pointillistic
exactly.
almost.
Oh, very good. Yes, very yes. Do you have that or not? You don't have to have it, but I'm just saying it's interesting, isn't it? That one's mind automatically thinks maths equals...
Like
exactly.
working things out.
Yeah,
You know what?
computational music.
Yeah, I think the moments that we have her working things out are often sort of more movement sections. But something else I found as well throughout the show, and this probably says more about me as a writer, because I'm not by any means a mathematician. So it really did become a lot more about character. So often we'll have her, there's a scene where she and this other sort of lead character, Poisson, they're meeting. She's at LeBlanc and he doesn't know who she really is, and they really hit it off, and they're having these really intellectual debates, and it's going wonderfully well, and they're at the pub. But what we hear is the internal, so from him saying, oh, I've never found like a friend like this before, this is really exciting, I'm usually really socially awkward, and her side, which is, oh my gosh, I'm dressed up as a man, what am I doing, how did I get into this situation? So there's definitely an awareness all the way through that they are working on amazing mathematical things, but actually it's become a lot more about how the characters are developing through that.
And it has to be, really, doesn't it? Because it can't be a musical about her theories.
Exactly.
Well, it can be, but who would come? You were talking about accessibility.
Absolutely.
That has to be a foundation stone It can't be the absolute subject, but it's, I'm just trying to think. I've seen musicals about Turing, Alan Turing as well, and they're fine, but they have to be about the story of Alan Turing.
Absolutely.
They can't be about the gubbins that creates computers.
And I think there are some moments
I'm
where...
using expert terms like gubbins here, by the way. So.
I mean... Yeah, the math side is hard. There are some moments where we sort of try to do a bit of explaining, and that's been a really interesting process because it's like you need to write something that the audience are going to... So it's simple enough for the audience to understand, but complex enough to make them think that they're being quite clever to understand it. Sorry, audience members in advance.
But it flatters. No, but it is a flattering process, isn't it? I've seen a magnificent show about Einstein, and in the middle... the chap who plays Einstein very successfully manages to boil down one of the theories of relativity, because there's more than one, which I didn't know originally. He's taught me a lot, into a bite-sized way of understanding it.
Yeah.
Although I'm sad to say that having since left the auditorium, I now can't remember the
It's
detail
gone.
of it. Yes. But there was a moment you think, I think I've got a handle
I think
on
I may
this.
have this, yeah.
So it also has, as you say, a flattering effect on an audience. So some audiences like that.
They do.
So with whom do you collaborate? Do you work on your own? Are you
No, so I have a writing partner called Jack Williams, and we have written all of our shows together so far. We actually met at school, so it's been
really?
So we've known each other since we were 11 in the same maths class, which has a lovely resonance now.
It was meant to be.
It was meant to be, and then we sort of build a small team around that when we're putting a show together. So for The Limit, we're working with a fantastic guy called Alfie Taylor-Gaunt, who we've worked with in a production capacity before, and he's co-directing with me, and he's also a dancer and he's choreographing it.
Which is interesting. It takes us back to what you were saying about movement being so important.
Mm-hmm.
Now, why is movement so important to The Limit?
I think one of the reasons that it's important is because we do span a fair few number of years, and it's about how we show that creatively within the time constraints that we have. So we have an hour to tell this story.
A good fringe bite-sized show.
Yeah, and I think if you're trying to make the struggle of gaining knowledge and acquiring knowledge accessible and transparent, a lovely way to do that is through movement. So we have her sort of like trying to find the answers in books and like some lifts and how do we show this like build up of time and this acquisition of knowledge. Doing it through movement just works really well.
And that's your end of the market, the movement, is it?
Oh no, that's Alfie.
That's Alfie,
yeah.
right? Okay. Oh, you said he was a dancer. So.
He is a dancer, yeah.
So I'm interested then, as co-directors, how did you make that merge?
This is the first thing we've co-directed, and I have to say, touch wood, I think we have similar instincts. So
they're symbiotically working even though you've not planned it that way?
Often. Sometimes we'll have a short discussion before.
Well, of course.
I
can't imagine it's so seamless.
so just mind reading. But yeah, so really, if it's about movement, he leads. If it's about scene work, I'll probably lead, and then we'll sort of come together and be like, do you think this is working?
You then dramaturg.
Yeah, exactly. To each other,
put together.
Yeah.
That might be quite interesting, because it could be a lonely job being a director.
Yeah, definitely.
And some directors like it that way, they like the idea of director as God, but actually collaborative oligarchy.
Just to have somebody being like, yes, I think that's the right feel is really reassuring, I find. And it's just lovely to have somebody to bounce ideas off. Like I have that with Jack as well, and I think like something that's quite unusual about the way we work is that we do write all aspects together. So it's not just one of us on music and one of us on lyrics. We do it all together. So often with the music we'll jam something out, or one of us will have like the seeds of an idea and then the other will come in and edit.
So you both bring musical and lyrical understanding to the piece?
Yeah.
So what's your favourite instrument yourself?
Piano.
If you're jamming, right, okay.
Or just voice.
And Jack?
He plays guitar.
Right, okay, well that's a fairly well-known combination. And how big is your cast?
It's 5. So we have Sophie and Poisson, they're the 2 leads, played by the same actors throughout. And then we have other characters who multi-role. So we have Sophie's mum, we have LeBlanc, and then
the original, you might say.
The original LeBlanc, who is quite a character. And we have 3 university professors, including Lagrange, who's the mentor figure, really.
So you've got lodestone characters, and then, as you say, the satellite characters going around playing a number of things to tell the arc. Now, I mean, I happen to know what happened to her. I'm not going to say here. How far did you want to take the story? Because there are a number of leaving points, aren't
Yeah,
there? I mean, any bio-musical could finish with death. It could finish with success. It could finish with failure.
Yeah.
It could, if her life is a life of hurdles.
It really
Which
is.
hurdle did you decide was going to be the one that she triumphed or
So yeah,
came across on, depending on the dramatic opportunity?
it was a really interesting and difficult decision. We knew we wanted to try and end it on a somewhat hopeful note.
Yes.
But we decided it did need to be a little bittersweet, otherwise it wouldn't really be true to her story.
Something chewy.
So the moment that we do end on, spoiler alert if you don't want to hear the ending, is just after she wins the French Academy of Sciences prize and then finds out in a wonderful song that her essay won't be published, that she's not going to be allowed to go to lectures still. And then we have just a scene with her, a kind of denouement scene where she's talking to her mother and she sings a song at the end that's more hopeful about how she's going to use her prize money to publish her work. So it's like, I'm going to do it my way, is the way we sort of wanted to end it.
So it's, yes, well, that's, I mean, Gypsy springs to mind immediately there kind of thing, almost, taking the circumstances you've been presented with and then trying to make a triumph out of them.
Yeah, exactly.
So, this sounds fantastic, and you very kindly said that we can listen to it's a demo recording, isn't it?
That's
the song.
right, yes.
So people should work on the basis that what they're hearing here is the bare bones and the
The bare
rudiments.
bones.
But they can hear the song in its glory and entirety along with the rest of the show. Where and how?
So the show is going to be performed at Vault Festival from the 6th to the 10th of March. It's on at the Network Theatre and it's on at 7:45 with an extra show on the Sunday at 4:30 p.m.
Now, the Vault Theatre, we should say, is an up-and-coming... Well, it's a venue, it's lots and lots of rooms, basically, down by Waterloo.
Yeah.
So very easy to get to.
Very easy to get to.
But also it's an up-and-coming kind of a sort of fringe festival, isn't it? The last few years it's really been increasing its profile,
Yeah.
and certainly in relation to musical theatre. So it's a kind of, it's not exactly a stop-off on the way to Edinburgh, but actually it's its own thing.
Yeah, it
but
is.
with a feel not unlike.
Absolutely, it's got a wonderful community feel about it as well, and I've tried to see as many shows as I can while the festival's been going on, and there's so much variety. It's lovely.
So, is there a website for the show or for you? How can people find the details that way as
Yeah,
well?
so you can find us on Vault Festival website, or you can go to our website.
I should just say it's VAULT.
That's right. Or you can go to our website, which is bottlecaptheatre, spelt the British way, .com.
Oh, right, yes. The British way being, ironically, the French way.
Yeah,
As Sophie
chaos.
Germain would have liked, yes.
Exactly how she would have said it there, yeah.
That's marvellous. So there are lots of ways of finding out about how to see the show. The show itself sounds to me really fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Sophie sounds like a fascinating person, and I think it's time that something was done. I'm delighted that musical theatre is the form. But of course, it has greater resonance even than just her life, doesn't it? So,
Yeah.
what are the splendid timings you've managed to arrange?
So the show actually coincides with International Women's Day, which is the 8th of March, and British Science Week as well. And British Science Week have actually given us some funding towards the show's development as well.
Perfect, and I think that's wonderful as well. That actually it touches on various other zeitgeisty considerations, as it should.
Yeah.
If theatre and musical theatre aren't touching the issues of the day, then the form becomes dead. Mm-hmm. Well, Freya, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much.
I've always been a fiend for logic, and logic would dictate if an instrument is faulty, one really should recalibrate. We strive to improve and advance. That's the battle cry of modern France. So you could say that it's my duty to society.
Well, there we are. That's the song Limitless, sung for this demo recording by Lois Graham, from the score of The Limit. And if you want to find out more about Sophie German, and I have to say she's an absolutely fascinating character, I've looked her up online, but more particularly the show about her, The Limit, you can do so. It's on at the Vault Festival between the 6th and 10th of March. Look up vaultfestival.com. It's an up-and-coming arts festival with a lot of musical theatre involved at the Vaults in Waterloo. And as promised, we're going to be hearing a little about a show called Botox or Bust, which can be seen between the 21st and the 23rd of March at the Shelley Theatre in Bournemouth. And it's an all-female cast and a new spoof comedy embracing the ageing process, written by Lisa Gay Wright. So let's hear just a very brief description of the piece and how it came to be from Lisa herself. Musical talk.
So, Botox or Bust is a spoof comedy musical about our obsession with ageing and the futile pursuit of youth. The main character is Madeline Green, who is a total drama queen, and she goes on a journey of self-discovery to learn that being middle-aged is not the end of the world and that there's more to life than social status and designer trends. I guess the question the piece investigates is whether a woman is defined or confined by her image. But the main theme I hope is highlighted is the importance of female camaraderie and companionship. So Botox started as a one-woman, one-hour show for Fringe that's ended up being a 2-act piece with an all-female cast of 10. The rehearsals are going pretty well so far, and the cast are laughing in all the right places, which is a good sign, hopefully. I think people should come and see the piece because it's topical, relevant and entertaining, hopefully, and I think it will resonate with men and women alike.
Musical talk. Well, that's Lisa Gay Wright, now a Bournemouth resident and an emerging writer who's already had success on the stage with Loose Change and Tales from the Hourglass. And it's that last show which started out as a one-woman show for the Fringe which has now evolved into Botox or Bust. And we have to remember, although the show is an all-female cast and its central character is a woman, that's Madeline Green, Lisa has tried to make the show resonate for men and women, so it is for everyone. And the lead actress in the piece is Joanne Mansfield. She plays Madeline Green, and she said of her character that she's delighted to be playing the challenging and not always likeable character of Madeline, and feels it's a fabulous opportunity to create a character that's never been seen before. Well, I think that sounds tremendously exciting, and if you do too, and you're anywhere near Bournemouth, try and catch it between the 21st and the 23rd of March at the Shelley Theatre. And to whet your appetite, Lisa has very kindly agreed that we can play a song from the show. So let's hear that now. A song from Botox or Bust.
I have looked into the eyes of fate and in the face of fear, seen human lives in scattered piles, men reduced to tears, and I've learned the truest words spoken are said by the small and the broken, and nothing you can buy can make you better or kind. I hope you never have to see the things my eyes have seen, or go where I have been. I hope you never have to know how being hopeless feels, what trouble really means. And if you never have to choose between are left alone to live and breathe and be, then you are spoilt, you are lucky, you are free. And to the puppet slaves and clones on high and mighty thrones you wouldn't be if you had seen the reality of day to day and living side by side along divided lines. I have lived beside my enemy, been helpless and afraid, heard every single battle cry and patriotic game, and I've learned that even those we judge, avenge and we oppose, are only wishing those they love to make our bones. I hope you never have to see the things my eyes have seen, or go where I have been. I hope the day will never come when you will walk on by another bloody scene, and that you never have to look behind, and that you never have your rights denied. Then you are safe, you are lucky, you are free. And to the puppet slaves and clones who've only ever known neat and tidy homes, you wouldn't be if you had seen.
Well, there we are, an absolutely jam-packed show today, talking about 6 thrilling shows, 3 of which you can see over the course of March. I do hope that you'll have a chance perhaps to catch 1, 2, or if you can travel, all 3 of those shows. And for me, it's a great pleasure to discuss some of the smaller shows which are coming up across the country, because that, I think, is where the beating heart of the life of musical theatre can still be found in this country. We're going to finish today with one more song, another one from Love Stuck. It's called A Life in Stills. So until next time, I hope you enjoy this song, and I'll speak to you soon. Goodbye.
Where has that boy gone? Why did I open my mouth? Say things that changed him, messed him about. Now I'm losing time, a conflict deep inside. I love him, the old him. I've poisoned his mind. I'm set on setting things right, pushed aside those beside me. I'm the rain on a summer's day, a red sky morning bleeding on the bay. Now I'm pushing, I'm pushing, I'm pushing, pushing the light away. This life that I have caught in photos I will frame. Happy, nervous, I remember this day. Jake's geeky smile, which I have never pushed aside those beside me. I'm the rain on a summer's day, a red sky morning bleeding on the bay. Now I'm pushing, pushing the light away.
This episode of Musical Talk, edited and presented by Thos Ribbits. Copyright 2019, except for the songs, where the copyright remains with the original creators. And my thanks go to them all for allowing me to play their songs in this episode. To find out more about the world of Musical Talk and listen to past episodes, go along to our website www.musicaltalk.co.uk or subscribe to us on iTunes and follow us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can, at Musical Talk Thos. Little gauge here, so I'll be looking at that as much as looking at you, which is good for you, but you'll see the top of my head, which is less good for you. So if you don't see my face, it's not worth seeing.
She just...
Yeah.
She just does what... Do you want me to wait a minute?
No, to be honest, they're children, they're not going to stop until they're 15. Conversationally, the level you're proposing to talk about?
I'll probably talk around this level. I'll try not to get... I'll try not to get too excited, which I can do. I might go, "Whoa!"